Hi, everyone. This is Samantha Oakley from ALA's Public Programs Office. Welcome to today's webinar, Branching Out, Amplifying Voices Through Public Performance and Art. Next slide, please. Before we start, I'd like to make a few quick announcements. Today's webinar is, there we go. Sorry. Before we start, I'd like to make a few quick announcements. Today's webinar is presented by ALA's Public Programs Office with support from ALA's Cultural Communities Fund. To learn more about the Cultural Communities Fund or make a contribution, visit ala.org/ccf. Hopefully, many of you are familiar with Programming Librarian, a website of ALA's Public Programs Office. We have a lot of program ideas and an online learning library full of free webinars just like this one. Next slide, please. A couple of notes about our virtual classroom. Only our presenters have microphone access, but you are welcome to type your questions and comments in the chat box. If you have any technical issues, please let us know using the same chat window, and we will respond to your questions as quickly as possible. Note that this session will be recorded, so if you would like to review any information, you may do so via the archived version that will be sent out within 48 hours of this session. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Caitlin.
Thank you. Hi, welcome. We're so glad you're here. My name is Caitlin Archer-Helke. I'm a user services librarian and interim director at St. Xavier University Library in Chicago. And as the chair of the library's Transform Communities Grant Award Committee, I am proud to introduce today's webinar about Albany Public Library's Branching Out initiative, the program that won the 2021 Libraries Transform Communities Engagement Grant. Albany Public Library's proposal really stood out in a crowded field of applications. Their vision and clear commitment to outside the box and outside the library community engagement was exciting to read and a delight to support. And as the daughter of someone in the arts, I can't say how thrilling it is to see artists and performers fairly compensated for their time and labor. It makes this even more exciting for me. I can't wait to learn more about their awesome project in this webinar. Now, I am delighted to introduce our presenter for this afternoon, Tor Loney. Tor is the branch manager for Albany Public Library's Howe branch in Albany's historic South End. He has many years of experience with youth programming, grant management, outreach, and collaboration. He has a focus on social justice and partnership, and is committed to addressing issues of inequity through internal organizational change, collection development, programming, and work outside the library in the community. And with that, I am delighted to turn the mic over to Tor.
Thanks, Caitlin. And hello, everybody. I'm very happy to share this program that I'm so grateful to have been part of and to be part of. It continues. My name is Tor Loney. I use he, him, his pronouns. And I'll get started talking about this program. Next slide, please. This statement is my own and not representative of my library's policies, though I am happy to say that my organization reflects and supports my views. I believe that libraries are education and an essential area of social service. I also believe that libraries cannot be neutral and must stand with those we serve, especially our communities of color. I feel that we should be overtly addressing white supremacy and all forms of discrimination within and outside our organizations through our organizational culture, collections, programming, and policies. This is a quote by Barbara Smith from her essential Boston Globe article, "The Problem is White Supremacy." Until this nation confronts white supremacy and commits to demolishing it brick by brick, police brutality, vigilante violence, and rampant inequality will continue, and America will move closer to becoming a failed state. Next slide. Branching Out is a mural and performance program supported by the American Library Association, the Friends and Foundation of Albany Public Library, and a Stephen J. McKee Foundation grant administered by the Center for Law and Justice, with the intention of addressing systemic racism and uplifting Black, Indigenous, and people of color, or BIPOC, artists, while pushing libraries and partner organizations to more deeply connect with communities of color in their service areas. In partnership with Youth Effects, Albany Barn, and Albany Center Gallery, and led by artist collective Amplified Voices, The program began in August 2021 with the creation of a portable mural to be displayed at library and community sites throughout the region. The mural was created by teens from these communities who worked with Amplified Voices mentors, including Jamela Anderson, Dee Collin, Ray Frazier, and Chloe Harrison, and lead educators Jade Warwick and Eugene O'Neill on mindfulness, personal expression, project planning, and art techniques. The mural exhibitions are further amplified with live performances by local BIPOC performers who also offer educational art programs for patrons in the weeks following their performances. Next slide, please. Amplified Voices is a community collaborative public mural program spearheaded by artist Jade Warwick to amplify the voices of local artists of color while also providing youth mentoring opportunities. Their mission is to give youth of color who are striving artists or have creative interest the opportunity to be able to express themselves in a world that tends to cut out their voices due to their age. They strive to provide a safe space for young artists to be able to socialize with like-minded creatives, work on and grow their artistic abilities, and reflect on how they can use art as a healing meditative device. Next slide. Youth Effects is designed to empower young people ages 10 to 24 by teaching them the technical and creative aspects of digital filmmaking and media production. Based in the city of Albany, New York, their primary mission is to work with diverse groups of youth from communities that have been historically underserved and in need of opportunities to learn filmmaking and acquire skills in emerging media technologies. Just making sure, can people hear? It looks like there was a okay, great, thank you. The library has worked with Youth Effects for many years, sharing their journey from part-time passion project to the freestanding multi-award winning program that it is today. They have run dozens of media production workshops and series in our branches, and we have partnered with them for community film screenings, discussions, and more. Last summer, Youth Effects documented marches and other actions occurring in Albany and supported other organizations in their activist work. Next slide. Here is a mini documentary created by Youth Effects during Amplified Voices' first project.
Voice, empower, no judging, healing, connecting, superpower. So when we come here, we're talking about things that really matter. We're talking about things that hurt people. We're talking about things that help people.
Having an art community for people of color and youth of color specifically is a huge gap that Albany seems to miss a lot. Amplified Voices was kind of fueled by passion and anger. Passion for me wanting to help in my community, anger at white artists kind of gentrifying spaces that I thought should be upheld for Black artists, considering that this is a civil rights movement involving mostly Black people and people of color.
Arts and crafts is what we think arts is in school, but healing and wellness is the most important aspect of teaching art. How do we communicate what's going on in our head? How do we express what we're feeling?
For the workshop that I facilitated, I really wanted the kids to generate their own ideas. So I asked a lot of questions. What is an activist? What is an artist? What is poetry? I wanted them to reach out into their imagination with language and have the language kind of ground them in what messages we wanted to convey in the mural.
We see the hand coming out of the ground. Our ancestors telling us we have to make the world different before people make it different in their own way.
If you are speaking on behalf of a community, maybe they should be included in the conversation too. Everyone had a part in the community of saying what the mural was going to be. Every aspect of the mural has an intention.
The roots leading up to Black freedom, and those roots having words.
What about people who just passed due to the movement and stuff like that, who were a cause of movement, kind of like
Different areas
George Floyd and stuff like that?
Everything that the adults are saying in these riots and these protests, these children were also saying it. this is their neighborhood, and there are a lot of political and social issues that are going on that can be overshadowed by adults. You don't have to be an adult to be an activist.
I've been through a lot in my young age. Whenever I was not in the mood to talk to anybody, I'd be able to express my art on paper. Black freedom means to me, no matter what color, race, you should be able to walk around the streets without having to be threatened by police.
I would like my community to know about me and people like me is that we're all our own people and we're all strong in what we do, and to not judge a book by its cover.
People think kids are too young to know anything and that they don't really know that much about stuff that's happening in the world, but we really do. I think it's important to amplify young Black and brown voices because we have a lot of important things to say and people could learn from what we say.
When people see the mural, I really want them to feel hope. Without hope, there can be no change. Without hope, people give up, and we can't give up right now. What we need to do is keep fighting.
I think having something like this may be a breath of fresh air. I hope all these kids go away feeling that their lives matter and that they could use art as a device for activism.
If I ruled the world, I'd be the girl that I was meant to be. I'd care for more than what's right in front of me.
I would make it so people can express themselves as much or as little as they want.
I would change the things that set us apart. I would make a difference with my art.
I would want no one to be judged for what they do, look, or act.
I'd speak with the voice God gave me and the body in which He shaped me, for those who couldn't before me and the kids who couldn't afford to.
Everyone would be happy, not worrying about what they are doing.
I'd make my mama proud by helping the crowd. I would rid the world of hate and hope that things might change.
There would be laughter and happiness if I ruled the world.
Thank you. Next slide, please. And that film is viewable online. The link is in the notes that will be shared out. Albany, New York is the largest city in a 5-county region with a population of just under 100,000. It is one of the most diverse cities for its size in the country, with about half of its population identifying as white. In 2020, the Urban Institute found Albany to be one of the most segregated and one of the worst for people of color cities in the US. The South End is one of 2 majority Black neighborhoods in Albany, with all the challenges typically seen in historically marginalized communities: higher unemployment and lower average income, lower school ratings, higher homelessness, etc. The South End has a reputation among some in other neighborhoods for being dangerous. Subscribers to this point to crime statistics and condemned buildings, but studies show that neither of these correlate to neighborhood safety. However, community surveys have repeatedly shown that residents themselves do not feel safe due to repeated experience of prejudice and violence coming from police. The South End is a historically redlined neighborhood, and the impacts of that remain, with all the previously mentioned challenges aligning exactly to redlining maps from the 1930s. It is a food desert, with the closest grocery store nearly a mile away. City officials have decried this publicly, but have not offered assistance either financially or structurally. The South End has much higher than average air pollution and asthma rates 3 times higher than elsewhere in the county. Residents have unsuccessfully fought for years to reroute crude oil trains that sit for hours each day near the largest public housing complex in the city, and repeatedly fought attempts by the city to build waste treatment facilities in the neighborhood. Next slide. Albany's history of social activism is deep, with the deepest roots in the South End. In the 1960s, a Black Panthers-inspired group called the Brothers fought political corruption, job discrimination, housing inequality, police brutality, and more. Another key figure is Dr. Alice Green, who founded the Center for Law and Justice in 1985, an organization committed to criminal justice reform. There are many other grassroots organizations in the South End working to address food insecurity, economic and educational opportunity gaps, youth support, community violence, and city engagement. Over the past 2 years, there has been rising awareness of Albany's inequities, bolstered by an NPR story and local news series on the lingering impacts of redlining and systemic racism, and local activist and Amplified Voices educator Jamela Anderson being featured in Time magazine. There has also been an increase in community coalition building, especially around American Rescue Fund disbursements. Next slide, please. Albany Free Library was founded in 1893 by John A. Howe, who also founded the first public kindergarten in the city. The Howe branch was constructed in 1929 as the new home for the library and is the oldest continually operating site among the library's 7 branches. Albany Public Library has always been a predominantly white institution, or PWI, with even less diversity among leadership and administration. This is common in libraries all across the country. Following the murder of George Floyd, library staff worked for a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant for a year-long training to evaluate internal and external policies and procedures. We also assisted with the founding of and continue to serve on a library system-wide racial equity committee. Over the past 2 years, the library increased its social justice programming and partnering, launching an anti-racism book club, a year-long Art for Social Justice program with activist musician Taina Asili, a series of community conversations, a new equity fellowship supporting Black library science students, community story walks with a focus on local authors and illustrators of color, and anti-racism materials lists for patrons. Next slide. I feel strongly that all organizations, but especially libraries, should actively engage in anti-racism training. This should go beyond implicit bias education and should be intended to aid staff in actively combating white supremacy. As Angela Davis said, in a racist society, it is not enough to be non-racist, we must be anti-racist. Most libraries operate within what Tima Okun defines as white supremacy culture. Here on this slide are some aspects of it, and there's much more about this in the resource slides at the end of this presentation. Neutrality is a myth. Last year, ALA released its resolution to condemn white supremacy and fascism as antithetical to library work, acknowledging that libraries have upheld and encouraged white supremacy both actively through discriminatory practices and passively through a misplaced emphasis on neutrality. Barbara Smith emphasizes that we need to be co-conspirators and accomplices, not allies. Roxanne Gay writes, "Black people do not need allies. We need people to stand up and take on the problems born of oppression as their own, without remove or distance." In all of this, it is crucial that organizational directives, policies, and practices carry this work. Library administration should be leading, not just encouraging or commending staff after the fact. Next slide, please. Externally, partners should be leading the conversation, with libraries in a service role. I've heard this described as the "you steer, we'll drive" model, with libraries providing the fuel of funding, space, promotion, etc., and partners choosing the direction. Libraries are complicit in a harmful history of white saviorism, where white folks from outside a community make assumptions about the needs of people of color. This often results in the help being rejected or unsuccessful, and the helper saying, "I guess they just don't want help." Here's a tip. If you are using the word "they," you have some internal work to do. Libraries also have a history of getting stuff for free. People like us, and they offer, and we have limited budgets and are nonprofits ourselves, so we often accept. This is sometimes great and sometimes predatory. Do we happily let the ESL group offer its services for free while block booking $400 sessions with the white didgeridoo player? To reverse this, we must pay people of color. Most of all, if we are asking them to provide anti-racism programs. I advocate for negotiating upward as much as possible, suggesting a higher amount than the partner suggests. When this is not possible, state the total budget upfront and ask what the partner would want to do for that amount that would leave them feeling great about the payment. The equity model I am promoting and which we were able to follow for this program is one of direct payment for BIPOC organizations with partnered predominantly white institutions, including the library, donating all services and goods. Next slide, please. Grant background. In 2020, there was a library directive to push further into anti-racism programming. In December, we began discussing possibilities for the library's Transform Communities engagement grant. We proposed a series in which local BIPOC artists would perform at 3 library branches where they would later offer education workshops for patrons. The goal was multifold: to support Black and Brown performing artists and to push library branches in less diverse neighborhoods to more deeply connect with their communities of color. The full grant of $2,000 would go directly to the artists, with the library and other supportive partners donating their services and time. We partnered with Youth Effects, who offered to help select performers and to record and live stream the events. We received letters of support from the mayor, Upper Hudson Library System, Center for Law and Justice, Showing Up for Racial Justice, and 2 art galleries. We had worked with all of these on one or more social initiatives previously. We submitted the application on February 1st, 2021, and were notified that we received it on March 29th. Next slide. The Center for Law and Justice shared a $12,000 grant opportunity supporting BIPOC youth in the creation of a community mural intended to inspire viewers to continue the fight against systemic racism. The awarded project needed to teach visual literacy and art skills while producing a mobile mural that would travel to 3 neighboring counties and be created by teens from those communities. The grant further specified that all participants would be paid, with at least 75% of funds being direct payments to BIPOC educators and students. Youth Effects connected me to Amplified Voices, and we met to determine the specific vision, budget, and timeline. Critical components to all involved were freedom of expression and emotional, social, and financial support of all involved. The final proposal was for Amplified Voices to lead 10 BIPOC teens from Albany, Schenectady, and Troy, New York, in a 7-day intensive where they would be taught skills in mindfulness, self-expression, and painting, culminating in the creation of an 8-by-20-foot portable mural of their own design. This would then travel to the 3 APL branches from the ALA grant and serve as a backdrop for the live performances, after which it would go to libraries in Troy and Schenectady. The intention was that these libraries would adopt the full branching out initiative and hire artists of color from their communities for performances and subsequent workshops. We submitted the application on March 15th, 2021, and were notified that we received it the following week. Next slide. Amplified Voices was closely partnered with a local artist incubator and a local gallery, so they were immediately added as partners. Other elements were expanded and added as we moved further with planning. Meals were part of the initial proposal, which got expanded when a food co-op offered to donate these for most of the program. The remainder were purchased from a BIPOC-owned deli. Several travel options were explored, including partnership with public transit. Ultimately, we partnered with a new Black-owned company to transport students from libraries in neighboring cities and neighborhoods to the program site. This further supported the model of libraries as community hubs, linking youth to area resources. For youth selection, we partnered with youth arts and nonviolence organizations in each city. Previously, selected teens already had art experience or expressed interest. For this program, we intentionally reached out to disenfranchised youth. 518 Snug, a local organization run by former gang members, did street outreach to connect with teens who they felt might be at risk. And Dick Blick donated several $100s worth of art supplies to create art kits for each student to take home. 12 students ages 14 to 17 were selected, 9 of whom ultimately participated. Next slide. This is a brief overview of the mural creation since time is limited. If you happen to be at the ALA conference in June, hopefully in person, I will be presenting along with Jade from Amplified Voices, who will give a much more thorough description of that process. Mural Creation Week ran for 7 days, from August 7th to 13th. Sessions ran from noon to 4 each day, starting with lunch and including snacks and beverages all day. Students were paid $12.50 per hour for a total of $350 each. Each day there was a mindfulness session led by Jamela Anderson, who besides being a local activist and philanthropist is a yoga instructor. At the beginning of the week, I asked the students about their feelings and experiences in libraries, then gave them a tour and shared the history of libraries as white space and our past and current lack of representation related to staffing, collections, and programming. I urged them, as I do with all humans, to push their community libraries to serve them better. Next slide. The performances and mural unveilings took place on weekday evenings, spaced about a month apart. Posts were sunk into the front lawns of each branch on which the mural was mounted. 2 artists or bands performed at each branch. Artists were selected by DJ Truemaster, a local DJ affiliated with Youth Effects. He initially was going to be the DJ and musical host for the sessions, but a series of conflicts led to him selecting other DJs for this. Youth Effects professionally recorded and live streamed. Nearly 300 patrons viewed the performances in person or virtually, and the artists received copies of the recordings, which are also on the library's YouTube page. Next slide. The debut display and performance took place on Tuesday, August 31st, scheduled to align with a weekly's farmers market held behind the branch. Several reporters were there, as well as the mayor. Most of the Amplified Voices instructors were there, including Jade Warwick, who gave a short speech. Several students and their families attended, and lots of people stopped as they were driving by who either knew someone or just wanted to ask what was going on. We also had excellent traffic from folks walking by or attending the farmers market. The DJ played for a few minutes beforehand, then I shared a brief description of the initiative and gave thanks. Jade spoke, and then Amani O+ opened with a blazing rap and spoken word set that included shout outs to local activists and criticism of public officials' roles in some recent events. Anise Cousin followed with an impassioned set of original R&B and conscious hip hop. Next slide. Here is a sampling of the performances from that night.
Rap game, Gavin D. Grower. I don't wanna be more than what I've been trying to be lately. Hate me. I'm the people's spirit, you can't break me. For every native acre you ain't earned, God is shady. For every tree your worship tried to burn down in Haiti. I'm the one you try to play with your slavery, berate me with begets in 380s. Don't play me. Want my 7 sisters like yo, wait, we at the library. Hold up, let me bring it down. We at the library. Wait, y'all, we at the library? Wait, no, shh, we at the library. Turn to your neighbor, say, shh, we at the library. Hold on, bring it down. We at the library. Turn to your neighbor, say, we at the library. Turn to your neighbor, we at the library. Okay, I'm just having fun, because that's the only time I would ever tell y'all to be quiet. Like, if I was literally joking, or we were having a sacred moment, we gotta have those, but my mission is to encourage and inspire you to speak up and speak out. That is it. That's what Amplified Voices is about, right? Can we make some noise for these incredible young people? What? And these dope artists making it happen, often without political support, often just trying to scrape it together, and then other politicians want to roll in and get a little photo shot, but they don't really be supporting it from the bottom. They don't know that the Amplify Voices project came out of the denial of Black artists expressing their pain and expressing themselves post the George Floyd revolution, the awakening that happened.
Be you rich or poor, you'll always want more. Black or white, we're fighting the same fight. It's not against each other, it's the almighty dollar. Money. Ooh, money. All right.
Thank you. Next slide, please. The second display and performance took place on Tuesday, September 21st. The BIPOC branch tends to serve an older population and has had noise complaints from the community in the past, and there was one for this event. but it was also one of the 2 branches participating in the library's Capital Curbsides program, where large window art displays were created. At the beginning, attendance was sparse, but a surprising number of passersby stopped and stayed for the performances. This event took place following the presidential assassination and earthquake in Haiti, and there was palpable mourning in our region. Dee Collin, who is Haitian American, spoke and read movingly about heartache and hope, followed by Mike Larry Draw, who made beats on the fly using a customized MIDI pad and rapped and sang over them. DJ AO played between sets and afterward into the night. Next slide. And here's a sampling of the performances from that night.
Call me Adjoa, Ashanti Twi for born on Monday. I am from immigrant mother finding soil to name her child American dream. Citoyenne, come to roost, direct tables and sit down anyway. I am from dried breast milk, language for grandmothers dying, from strong backs, weak hearts, and summer heat and winter. Call me a lesson learning to unlearn wounds. From even our sons do not protect us from their fathers. I am from Big Belly and first and only, an outcry for motherhood, from calabashes emptied of water. Call me miracle, from break and silence, mouthing syllables together. I am from preacher blood, from holy men who say women are supposed to, from mask I mastered for altar and pew. Call me an unmasking for God. Call me sermon, call me poem, flame, burn to my tongue. Call me a shell breaking and say my name in Hebrew. God is my judge. The rest is none of anyone's business, lest I make it known. What is it they say? What's in the dark eventually comes to light. Call me a reckoning, a new day, a 24-hour sit-in protest in this here sun.
Yeah, I'm an outsider, but everything I do on the inside is beside the point. Shooting off my mouth prematurely won't provide or allow anointing. Every brick I raise over is a phrase, praise I begin to coin it. Nada to our name, I can see why Brother Larry O is gone. Reptiles lurking all around in the form of a human being, accompanied by a match of misery and other uses acting for malady. Nigga, what type of pillow do you sleep on while you dreaming? Cause we tired of your fallacy rapping. We talking the unity of a people. You coon packing in a coon jacket like a raccoon in the afternoon, searching through what is already eaten. We calling a moment of silence for violence, my nigga. You already speaking? We carry your fork and knife with us, so start pointing out when you saying the beef is. That was well done, no work needed. That fried you up, that was over easy. None of you MCs have a clue what anything you doing. I suggest that you keep moving. And I just finished lacing up my kicks, equipped to run the block. What I do is a shooing. Representing for my folks, looking just to get up from out of this poverty. Rockets fly through the monarchy, in the face of democracy.
Thank you. Next slide, please. The third display and performance took place on Wednesday, October 6th. Pine Hills is in a college area bordering a fairly busy and loud street and bus stop, so the artists chosen were willing and able to compete with that. This event had the smallest audience, but with a good number of people who came specifically for the music and stayed the whole time. And there were passersby who stayed, as with the previous performances. Singer-songwriter The Age opened with soulful original songs and one choice cover, with Nate DeGreat DJing and Victory Soul Orchestra playing horn-supported hip-hop funk past dark. Next slide, please. Here is a sampling of the performances from that night.
Baby, it's a fever burning in my soul, my soul. Baby, can you feel me? Yeah. 'Cause you need to know it's all about you. It's all about you, girl. It's all about you and all the things you do. It's all about you, girl.
You should take a chance and tell her you love her. You should take a chance and quit your job. You just need a little more courage and a little bit of faith. It's not that hard. I just want y'all to make it. Grab life by the horns, take it. Don't wait for it. Go get it. You might miss your chance if you are holding up the ball. Just ask her to dance to you. You both get involved. Procrastination gon' kill a nation of hopeless romantics. The celebration of life's creation and all of its antics. Swaggy, we from the mothership. Don't be acting all aggy, just for the fun of it. Hubris, I think we got enough of it. Victory soul, dirty mo, I'm loving it. I'm in the room with such confidence. They're like, what's wrong with him? Not a damn thing. Baby, not a damn thing. We give the room such confidence. They're like, what's wrong with them? Not a damn thing. Baby, let them all sing. You gotta structure. You gotta structure. You gotta structure. You gotta structure.
Thank you. Next slide, please. The Schenectady display and performance took place on Saturday, December 4th in the early afternoon. This was the first indoor display, starting in a programming room for the performance and then being moved to the children's area where it will be until spring. Amplified Voices instructors were in attendance as well as Schenectady students and their families. City teens performed original poems and spoken word about their experiences around racism, activism, identity, and art. Next slide. Some of the outcomes from this program. Student impact. Students took home art kits and many said they made paintings that first night of the mural creation week. We explained that they are now professional artists since they were paid for the project. Several now sell their art online and in the community. They get to see the lasting impact of their work living on in the community and through media coverage of the program. They see themselves represented in the piece. Instructors intentionally mixed paint to match a student's skin color, and she then said it was too dark. She was supported in using that color to celebrate her true self and invite others to do the same. Students chose the mural images to intentionally reclaim library space for teens of color. One of the artists said, "The mural shows a woman opening a book into a magical world. Working with students from Albany and Troy was surprising. It was really different. We all came from different places, but it helped us. Different experiences, different upbringings. It was cool to see all that come out in the piece." The project also received great publicity, which led to many new projects and partnerships for the library, Amplified Voices, and the performers, whose works have also been purchased for library circulation, further extending their reach. The library gained many patrons who hadn't previously visited those branches or who hadn't engaged with the library at all before. We were able to engage with our community in a new and deeper way, including stepping into wider social justice work by supporting activist voices in our spaces. We were able to explore equity models more deeply by inviting partners to share in them. This has led to other libraries and partners exploring or adopting them as well. Next slide. What's next? There are more branching out displays and performances coming up this spring and beyond. All will adopt the full initiative of working with BIPOC partners to offer programs in support of the mural. Troy Public Library is up next for a display and performance in May, and 2 other libraries are scheduled afterward. The hope is for the mural to travel as long and far as possible. After this, possible sites for the mural to live include a local museum, a city park, or a library branch. This decision will be made by the mural creators. There are also several new mural projects that recently occurred or are upcoming. Amplified Voices recently completed a 100-foot-long mural for the Honest Weight Food Co-op in Albany, and Jade completed the Uniting Line project, painting a local bridge. Amplified Voices has several murals in the works, including at the 518 Snug office. The library also recently completed the first phase of a city-partnered traffic calming and street mural project, which will continue in the spring. And there are other new programs and possibilities for all the branching out partners, separately and together, including a public television documentary about Jade that premieres next month, several library-connected art and music programs in the works, and this presentation and the joint program at ALA Annual in June with Jade presenting. Next slide, please. I've created several slides of resources. The first two are library specific. On this first slide, here are several statements that were made by libraries, public statements. These were either issued through press releases or put on the library's websites. Also letters, including one by the Urban Libraries Council that was a statement for libraries to sign. Statements by PLA, Library Journal, some links to anti-racism resources specifically for libraries, one from ALA. There's a wonderful organization called We Here that is committed to centering library workers of color, and much of their work is only for folks who identify as BIPOC and work for libraries. They also have programs that libraries can pay for who don't identify as BIPOC. And the last link is a link to the anti-racism resources lists that Albany Public Library created. And these link to the collection. They link to Hoopla and Overdrive and our own library, ILS. There's also a lot of links to library staff diversity, statistics, and studies. Next slide, please. I'm happy to speak more about any of these if folks have questions. Here's some links to social justice in libraries resources. Occasionally, folks will ask the question, why social justice in libraries? I hope that we are mostly past that question, but these are some great resources that discuss that, especially if folks have board members who this feels foreign to, or communities who may not see this as a natural connection. And lastly, on this slide, some guides for equity-based partnership. Next slide, please. Here's some more wider anti-racism resources that are not library specific. A lot of resources about white supremacy culture. Learning about white supremacy culture was very eye-opening for me, and I really saw myself deeply implicated as someone who learned language rules very early and loves grammar and sort of classical rules of grammar and language, seeing that these were part of a white supremacy culture, and I've worked to alter that for myself. And also a lot of more general anti-racism resources. Next slide, please. And these are just some links to some national organizations that are really fantastic to connect with. And many of these do local works. Color of Change specifically has done several partnered programs in our community. And these organizations often have local offices or local grants that folks can use to support programming. And the last, which to me is by far the most important of this entire presentation, is about local organizations. This program only happened because of the incredible local organizations in my community, and getting to know them, getting to sit at their table and see what they are, what their needs are, what their wants are, and figure out ways that we can work together has been the greatest joy of my career. And so I really recommend that folks go and do that. And you might not know what it is that the partnership will lead to. It's just, there's just an interest. And my experience is that miracles and surprises continue to come from those connections. Next slide, please. This is just my contact info. Please feel free to reach out to me. Any questions about anything, and I will be always super happy to talk about any of this. And next slide, please. And these are many of the incredible community partners that made this program possible. I also wanted to especially thank ALA, PLA, and specifically Caitlin, Megan, Samantha, and Hannah for their help with the grant process and this presentation. That is the end of my formal presentation, and I would be happy to answer any questions or talk more with folks. Thank you.
Thank you, Tor. That was a great presentation. So as mentioned, we have about, yes, virtual class. We have about 15 minutes left for questions. So feel free and type those in either the chat box or the Q&A box. We are monitoring both. In the meantime, while you're thinking of your questions, I do have one question. It's kind of a logistical one. So how do you go about determining how much you should pay artists in your area, especially maybe the teens that you paid?
The non-teens is an easier question, although in our case, we had a somewhat easy answer to that, but by asking them. The first thing that I do is I ask them what they normally charge. And sometimes, I talked about negotiating up, and sometimes we'll get folks who will say, oh, and this happened with a couple partner programs where they said, well, you can't afford what I usually charge. And so we'll always say, well, try us, please, let's aim for that then. We can find a grant, we can try to find funding. The goal is they should feel great about this, and they should be genuinely supported and not feel that they are compromising. My view is that we should be the ones compromising. I know we are all strapped and libraries are not well funded generally. So sometimes you have to get creative to try to find that funding, but there often is funding. And then if there's not, then I try to always start the conversation with asking what they would like. And then I'll say, well, here's what we have. What would you like to do? What works for you within this amount of money that would have you feel great about this? For the teens, we're fortunate that in Albany, there is a summer youth employment program for teens. And so that was our template we just matched what they pay.
Great, thank you. And it looks like David has a general question. They are saying that was excellent and wanted to know if you were pleasantly surprised by the quick turnaround times on the grant.
It's interesting to see the two grants compared. So there's a national grant and that was a $2,000 grant, and then we had a local grant that was a $12,000 grant, and this is a grassroots nonprofit organization. And that one had the quicker turnaround. That was surprising. And both of them were definitely pleasant turnarounds. ALA was really transparent from the very beginning, so the timelines were laid out and if folks, and so I will definitely encourage people to apply. This grant portal is live right now for the next round. And my experience has been incredibly positive, and it continues to blossom. So we definitely felt supported by ALA in this grant process, and part of it was the transparency and clarity about the timelines. So I was pleasantly surprised when I saw those when I first looked at the grant application, and then pleasantly happy that things aligned with that.
Great, thank you.
I see a question here about labor laws regarding paying teens for their work. Yes. So, and I'm sure this varies by state and probably even by county. In Albany, you need to have working papers and be within, if you're under 16. There are other ways to give stipends to youth, especially with art programs, and that's fairly common. But so that was the other piece where the Amplified Voices and the other groups that they were partnered with had previously provided stipends, and we had been part of other programs that had provided stipends to youth. So it needs to be done in a certain way. And I would look into those questions, but we were fortunate that we had folks who had that previous experience.
Great. And then it looks like Tim also has a question. So that is, thank you for the presentation, and was wondering if you could speak a little bit about how you promoted the events and what you found to be the most effective way for spreading the word.
Yeah, thanks, Tim. So all the traditional channels, we did all of those things. Facebook, the library's website, we have an online calendar, Instagram, Twitter, all of those things. ALA also really boosted that, and other local sort of media partners. Our WMHT is the local PBS affiliate in our area, and we've been long partners with them, and so they helped to cross promote. I also have an email that I send out periodic digests of upcoming programs happening at my branch to community partners. And so that way community partners can themselves sort of promote. And so I'll always send out copies of the posters and links. Physical posters in the community are very helpful. We certainly tend to find, especially at my branch and in my community, that folks are not getting their information online about library programming. It's mostly happening through word of mouth, or they see a physical thing in the community. So it was important to make sure and spread those out. And also then Amplified Voices and our community partners who were actively involved continue to share out next phases of the project.
Great. The next question is from Daisy. They are wondering, how did you recruit students to participate, and did you have an application process?
We had assumed we would have an application process. This typically Amplified Voices has folks that they're already connected with and are working with, and so it's been more organic in the past. And in this case, we had started to draft some online tools. We were planning to have a paper and an online form for folks to apply. The concern from Amplified Voices is that they want to make sure that they have folks who are committed and are going to, because it's a 7-day intensive and you really need to come every day, they want to make sure that they have folks who are really going to be engaged, stay engaged, and will be committed to it, and also be interested in it. So for this one, we had started to draft some tools, and instead Amplified Voices ended up working with community partners who already were connected to youth and families to select. So it wasn't done in a competitive way. It was just done with folks sort of being invited to join.
Great, thank you. I think those are all the questions that we had in the chat. If I missed your question, feel free to repost it so it kind of floats back up to the top. Otherwise, I am going to say a huge thank you to Tor for this presentation, as well as Caitlin, this year's LTC-EG committee chair, for joining us. And thank you to my colleague behind the scenes who has been helping with everything, Megan Geisiker. And this session is being recorded and will be posted within 48 hours after we end.
Thanks all.
Thank you.